taking those from nobody.
Your superstars have off games.
Follow us on social media at the Celtics Talk Weekly.
Welcome into Celtics Postgame Live, everybody. I'm Justin Lowe. Alongside with me, Seamus Darlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. And Seamus, the Boston Celtics earned their fifth straight victory behind a 114-103 fourth quarter domination. Defensive domination, I should say, because Celtics were picture perfect on the offensive end. Detroit missed a lot of shots, but nonetheless, might not have been the prettiest game for either team, but Celtics got their fifth straight win on the Garden Parquet with Celtic legends Anton Walker, Paul Pierce, Brian Scalabrine, James Posey, Leon Poe, and all the good fellas. Kelly Olynyk was in attendance as well. He happened to be in the blue jersey, but Seamus, what do you make out of this win? I mean, this was a tough, gritty win. Every time the Pistons and Celtics meet, this is a nail-biter.
Well, the Celtics have all of a sudden had a couple of performances like this season where in the first half, they don't exactly look like the defensive juggernaut that we're used to seeing in this game tonight. 62 points in the first half for the Detroit Pistons, yet for the game, they only score 103. And the second half turnaround for the Celtics, that's really what we've seen the progression in with this team. You know, early on, we said, early starts, you want to get off to early good starts, but then they would dominate the second and third quarters and completely fall apart in the fourth. And now it feels like the script is flipped a little bit where they're still solid in the start of games. However, they're not exactly taking off with it until late in games. And that's typically what you see with good teams is not only can they execute early in games, they can go out and dominate a team like the Celtics did with the Pistons tonight late in games. And that's a trend with the Celtics lately that should be a good sign moving forward, because you look at certain things with good teams and how you gauge certain teams. And the number one thing, or I shouldn't say the number one thing, but a main facet of a good team is can they close, right? And the Celtics so far, they've been able to close over these past 2 months, and tonight was just the latest example.
Another game where Jaylen Brown had a decent game. I wouldn't say anything spectacular. Shot really poorly from the floor. I thought he got to the basket really, really well tonight. I thought he finished really well as well. But overall, 8 of 22, 1 of 9 from 3. We talked about it a little bit towards the end of last post-game show just a couple of nights ago in the win over – who was it? Who did we win over the other night? Whatever, it was our last win. We're beating everyone. Yeah, it was the Hornets, correct. But we talked about Jaylen looking a little bit, humbled up a little bit. Did you see that tonight? Is this a concern, or did he just have an off game?
I don't really think it's a concern moving forward at all. I mean, yes, last game he looked hobbled, and tonight I didn't think he looked 100%. I expressed that at halftime that, he didn't look 100%, but he clearly does not look like he looked back in December and in November when he had that hamstring issue where just from night to night, he just did not look like the same Jaylen Brown. He still looks less than 100%, but he's to the level of, is he going to be healthy in the next 14 games going into the playoffs? And I think that answer right now, as long as he doesn't sustain further injury, that answer is going to be yes. So I don't think the Jaylen Brown thing is as concerning as, just saying simply, the Celtics offense right now, a little inconsistent right now early in games. I think that's more concerning than something like Jaylen Brown's issue, his ankle issue.
Yeah, and somebody tonight, Celtics didn't really get that much production off the bench. Nothing crazy scoring-wise, I should say. I thought the effort was somewhat there. But Derek White, 11 points off the bench. Grant Williams, 7. Peyton Pritchett, 4 points, 2 rebounds, and a steal in 13 minutes. Didn't play the most minutes, but he stepped up hugely in that fourth quarter, Seamus. I want to talk to you a little bit about Peyton Pritchett because his shot hasn't been falling the past few games, but tonight, defensively, he was there when the Celtics needed him the most.
Yeah, Peyton Pritchett, earlier in the game, he only played, 3-4 minutes in the first half? And you could tell that the Celtics, this is a little bit of a matchup issue for them against the Pistons. And typically, you see this all the time. When a bad team plays a good team 3 or 4 times or even 2 times, and they either get them in a game or play them well, it's typically because of the matchups, right? And the matchups that the Detroit Pistons have for the Celtics forces the Celtics to go a little bit small, and that's exactly what they did in the second half with Peyton Pritchett. And they even threw in Derek White in there a lot during the second half. And Peyton Pritchett, we talk about, or Danny Ainge before the draft in 2020, the main sort of part of Pritchard's game that Danny Ainge enjoyed was his energy and his ability to just work hard on both ends of the floor despite his size. We've seen a lot of point guards come through here, smaller point guards, Isaiah Thomas, Kyrie Irving, and Kemba Walker. All of those guys, they've been able to hold their own defensively at times because they give so much effort. And that is the same deal with Peyton Pritchard. Yes, he's going to be a liability on that floor at times, and most of the time that's the situation you're going to find yourself in with different matchups. But if he can go out there in a game like this and exploit different mismatches and give that high energy, that high effort, especially in a game where the building is just hopping on a night like this. It's Friday night. We're playing the Pistons. We expect to win. All the legends are in the building. That can be really valuable to a team. And you're seeing now with Peyton Pritchard where his role is really slotted in with this team. Whereas back in November, we were talking about on the same program, where does he fit into the team? He clearly fits into that, third string point guard. You can mix and match him with different lineups. At times, you're probably not going to use him a ton, but he's a piece that can be slotted in to a rotation later on down the line for sure.
And the night's going well when the TD Garden breaks out a wave, and it actually was a perfect wave. And I know you touched on it.
No, okay. Like some people out there are always like, oh, the wave, what year is it? Or, the wave, like this is so stupid. Why do people do this? You know how much human evolution it took to come to this moment, to get us to this moment right now of like just experience the wave, especially, say if you were in an arena or at a ballpark where it happens, everyone is somehow coordinating themselves at the same time to make a ripple around the stadium. It's like, we can't even get on the same page on anything in society, yet we're able to do the wave.
Right.
Able to do the wave randomly, and it's kind of impressive. It's kind of crazy and the fact that people sit back, I'm spending way too much time on the wave, but it happened tonight, whatever. But the fact people sit back and call it stupid, no, enjoy this moment. It may be just a stupid thing that means nothing, but the wave is crazy. How are we this coordinated as humans?
And you typically don't see the wave in a basketball game or like an indoor arena game. Usually you see them, like you said, at a ballpark, maybe sometimes at a football game, but not an NBA game, especially in Boston. I've been at games in the TD Garden where fans have tried to start the wave and it just looks totally ridiculous. But yeah, they hit on that pretty well, Seamus. I was pretty glad we touched base on that. But we still have a guy I want to talk about, Seamus, really quick. We talked about a lot of guys on this team tonight. Obviously, Jason Tatum had a phenomenal night, 31 points, 8 rebounds, 6 assists, flirting with a triple-double. But Marcus Smart was tonight's player spotlight, where I think this was just a typical Marcus Smart game. You got the grit on both ends of the floor, diving on loose balls, hitting shot sticks of 10. That's extremely efficient, dishing the ball out, making these unbelievable passes that he's been making over the past couple of months. This was just a purely great executed game by Marcus Smart. And I feel like Detroit is a great matchup for Marcus Smart, where this is a tough, young, gritty team who's tough as nails. And I feel like that's just Marcus Smart as a player, Seamus. 20 points, 5 assists, 5 steals, 3 rebounds on 6 of 10 shooting. What stuck out to you, maybe even not on the stat sheet, what stuck out to you tonight about Marcus Smart in this win over the Pistons?
Well, a couple of weeks ago when we lost to the Pistons right before All-Star break, both Marcus Smart and Robert Williams missed that game.
Right.
And I think we came on the post game. We talked a lot about the game, but I felt like we didn't necessarily give enough to the fact that both of those guys didn't play that game. We only lost by 1. Right. Tonight you see these guys' impact, and especially Marcus Smart's impact in a physical, tough, and gritty game like tonight. And the fact that he's able to score 20 points was magnificent on a night where Jaylen Brown, he was 8 of 22. He got to the free throw line. So did Marcus Smart. And that was a huge boost to not only his game, but everybody else's game too. Just think about this. He only made 6 shots tonight. He scores 20 points, and he gets to the free throw line 7 times. If Marcus Smart is getting to the free throw line 5+ times, his game goes up to another level. Because I mentioned on this program, a high of Smart is not what you want to see, which ultimately means you're not going to have many 20-point-plus nights out of Marcus Smart. Well, if he can get to the free throw line, all of a sudden scoring goes up, not only for him, but the entire team as well. And just in general for the entire team, getting to the free throw line is going to be so important come playoff time. And Tatum's ability to get there, Brown's ability to get there, and Marcus Smart on a night like this, you don't expect him to go to the free throw line 7 times a night. But if he can get, like I said, around 5 free throw attempts a night, that's going to put the Celtics in a pretty big place moving forward. And just going back to tonight's game, Marcus Smart in the free throw regard, in the physicality regard to this game, Marcus Smart was just fantastic tonight.
He was phenomenal. Let's take a quick look at tonight's player spotlight leaderboard for the season overall. I remind you guys, there are some players included pre-trade deadline that had won the award that we still love to keep on this list because their effort certainly goes unnoticed. Marcus Smart with tonight's player spotlight. He earns his 7th Celtics Talk Weekly player spotlight of the season. He creeps up to that second spot, just 4 awards away from Jaylen Brown. Jason Tatum still leads the way with 17. Again, Marcus Smart taking the way here tonight. 20 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, or not 3 rebounds rather, 5 assists, 5 steals on 6 of 10 shooting. He wins tonight's player spotlight. Seamus, what if I told you in the last 21 games, the Boston Celtics hold the best record in the league at 18-3, Seamus? Let's take a look at this. Look at, if you can see this, Seamus. Wins all over the board. Just 3 losses against 3 teams that the Celtics could beat. They lost by 1 against Detroit. They lost by 21 against Indiana. No Al Horford that game. We saw the Celtics. They had a rough night, second night of a back-to-back, I believe. But nonetheless, we saw that game in Atlanta. That was actually a couple months ago. This has been a big span for the Celtics the last 21 games. 18-3 is the best record in the NBA right now in the last 18 games. These Boston Celtics are red hot, piping hot, Seamus. What has gotten into these guys? I mean, this is unfreaking believable. And 13 points tonight. I know, the number one answer is obviously defense, but these guys are really, really coming together at a perfect time, Seamus, just a few weeks away from playoffs.
Yeah, and you hope the health sustains itself because that's been such a big part of this all, everybody being healthy. But that run right there, really, we, in a sense, I don't want to say we gave up on the Celtics because we were still coming in here and saying, there is a chance, but we don't expect it to happen.
Right.
However, now, anyone who held on to those chances or held on to the Celtics stock back in January and December, they're seeing massive, massive returns right now because everybody is healthy and because that defense is turning up to another level. Those games right there, the last 21 games were 18-3. Those 3 games, we had a chance to win the Hawks game. That was another game at the time. That was another game at the time where you went, typical Celtics, can't pull that one out, can't do it. Yet you look at the schedule since then, we've only lost to the Pistons and the Pacers. The Pistons we've already talked about. They play us well. That was the second night of a back-to-back. No Marcus Smart, no Robert Williams. We lose by 1. And to the Pacers, that was just an anomaly. You look at the rest of the schedule, dominant win after dominant win after dominant win. And all of these games, too, you have to consider the Celtics aren't just pulling these games out of their ass.
No.
They're actually going out and executing and blowing past some of these teams. Yeah. And at a certain point, you got to go back and say, or you have to look at the Celtics situation and say, man, this is a legitimate squad. This team is actually beating quality teams handedly on a nightly basis. And right now we're only in March, and hopefully that continues going into April. And like I said, the health, it's been such a big part during those last 21 games. Most of the guys have been healthy, and you see when they're not, we see different results. So moving forward, you want to see everybody healthy and also them continuing to play this way like most of us or a lot of us, expected they would be able to after the trade deadline.
I'm just so blown away. And you're right. You make a really good point. It's not like the Celtics are sneaking out of these games, up 1 or 2 points, a couple possessions. There are some of those games that we saw on this 21 game list. I'm actually want to pull it up one more time. We've seen, look at how we started this 21 game little streak we have here with the 30-point win over the over the Wizards on the road, then by a 50-point win, a 53-point win on the road at home against Sacramento. And then we pulled teams out like the Heat by 30 and double-digit wins over the Brooklyn Nets 2 out of the 3 times we played them in the last 21 games. Obviously, that Orlando game where Mo Bamba got absolutely murdered. And then we saw against the Memphis Grizzlies just recently, the Celtics were able to take care of business with them by 13. And then just a couple of nights ago, 115-101 over the Charlotte Hornets. So you're totally right. It's not like the Celtics are just pulling these games out of their asses. They're really pulling together for 4 quarters. And it's showing on the scoreboard. Even going back to, we didn't mention it during that little 21-game streak, that Philly game, the Celtics just absolutely jumped on them from the tip. All 3 Brooklyn games, I thought that obviously the 3rd game is a lot closer with Kyrie and KD playing, but those first 2 games were unbelievable. The Celtics are kicking butt right now, and it's unbelievable. It's a phenomenal timing as well, Seamus. I mean, if we were on a post-game show about 2 months ago, that graphic, if we saw that, like, we would probably laugh at whoever made that graphic, right?
We would
say those were predictions. Say those were predictions, and we looked at that graphic, Seamus. There's no way. I think we just probably would have ended the show right there and said, what the hell was that? What was that? Why is that there? How is that there? There's no way in hell that's going to happen. But now we're saying, okay, wait. Is there a possible chance you go on a deep run in the Eastern Conference, potentially finals, potentially ECF? I mean, the way
potentially ECF is on the table.
Right.
Eastern Conference Finals is on the table.
Totally.
Finals we'll have to see because Brooklyn, Philly
even
is still
ECF,
tough.
even the Eastern Conference Finals, right? Like 3 months ago, we were talking about, oh my Zeus, are we gonna have to play for the lottery? Are we gonna have to play for this play-in tournament for the 2nd straight year? And there's a potential where we have to win 2 games instead of just 1 game. I mean, this Celtics team has completely turned this around.
We're in a position now to, number one, have home court advantage in the first round. That could 100% happen because we're hot right now. We're showing no signs of slowing down whatsoever. Jason Tatum is not showing any signs. Our defense is not showing any signs of slowing down. None of these factors are going downhill for the Celtics, while as these other teams, the Bulls are in front of us, the Bucks, the Cavs behind us. Right. They're a little up and down on nights. The Celtics are hot every single night, but just going back to a couple of months ago, I mean, we were sitting here, if you would have showed us that graphic and, as a prediction, like you said, number one, you would have been called a total green teamer and
right.
You would have not been taken seriously. But if somebody came back from the future, say we came back in the past from the future and went, this actually happened, I think I would faint because I just look at the roller coaster of the season we had this far. And I just remember after the Clippers game, I think I made an edit of Lucky just like standing in the middle of a war zone, just out in the abyss. And I was like, we have just hit some new low that I never thought that this team would ever hit, specifically this team with, Tatum, Brown, Horford, all those guys back when we had Schroeder and Josh Richardson. And now you look at the situation and we're somehow a top 5 team in the NBA.
Yeah.
It's like, how did that happen? How does that happen? It's been, we've had crazy seasons before in the sense, 17-18 was crazy because we lost everybody and just kept winning games. But this season is just crazy from the fact that we were a bottom 10 team for 2.5 months, and somehow we're now a top 5 team in the league, arguably. I mean, who is above us right now in terms of, wow, that team is really dominating everybody right now? Even the favorites. You look at the Nets and the Sixers, who everybody was playing, or everybody was paying attention to last night. Yeah. The Nets, they're still not even in the 7-8 range yet, unless they actually probably moved up after last night's win. Not sure because the Hornets, I don't know, but they're still in the play-in.
Yeah, they are.
The Sixers, you have major questions after last night. Going, WTF, James Harden? What was that?
Yeah.
So
totally.
Those are supposed to be the top 2 teams in the East. Then you have the Heat. They have their own problems themselves with their offense. They almost look like I don't want to say they're a mirror of our team, but that's going to be defense versus defense right there. And personally, you know, we have the better offensive flamethrowers out there in Tatum and Brown. So this is so wide open right now in both leagues, or both conferences, I should say. And it's just so wild to see, or just to feel the mentality, or just see the mentality that we had back in December versus where it is now. I mean, I feel like we're located in the year, 2018 right now, where we expect to win games on a nightly basis. Earlier in the season, it just wasn't like that. We were going into games like, oh man, Celtics play tonight. This is not good. It's not good. And all of a sudden, we come in here and we expect to dominate.
Right.
And we did to a certain extent down the stretch tonight. It's just crazy.
And
we're saying all this after a win against the Pistons, but whatever.
I mean, that's true, but at the same time, the Pistons are playing some of their best basketball all season. They're winners 6 of their last 8 games. They've been playing unbelievable basketball. I mean, they are such a great, young, gritty, strong team, and they are so much more than their record says. And I think since post All-Star break, I actually think they're one of the hotter teams in the league, which is funny to say. That and the Pelicans have really woken up. But look, you got to give Boston credit, and it's the way. Like, the thing is, I don't like when people say, "Oh, they beat the Magic, or they beat the Pistons, or they beat the Nets without Kyrie."
That's out the door now.
Yeah, but like, even when people said that, or even when people still say it, I say, first of all, they're all professionals. Like, there's no excuse. You're all professional. You're all on the NBA. There's definitely different skill sets for sure, but you all get an NBA contract. You all have opportunities. Go out there and make the most of it. Second of all, Seamus, it's the way the Celtics win. It's the way the Celtics play. It doesn't matter what team. We've seen the Brooklyn Nets 3 times in the last 21 games, and the Celtics have taken care of business all 3 times. Whether KD or Kyrie were out there, whether James Harden or Ben Simmons was out there or not, the Boston Celtics took care of business, and 2 out of the 3 times they did exactly what they were supposed to do from the opening tip, and they dominated them. Same thing with Philadelphia. The Philadelphia 76ers had everyone but James Harden. I know Harden is a huge piece there, but they absolutely crumbled without James Harden, and the Celtics followed the game plan very well. And from the tip, they played really, really good basketball. I don't even think the Sixers broke 80 before the Celtics broke 130. I mean, that was unreal. And the way the Celtics are playing is unreal, and they're really unstoppable right now. 5-game win streak. The Milwaukee Bucks, I believe, have the league's best 6. And with this win, Seamus, the Celtics pull into a virtual tie for that 4 seed with the Chicago Bulls. But since we have one more loss than them, I believe they own the seed for right now. But a win against Dallas on Sunday on KG night will probably lock the Celtics in at that 4 seed for, the foreseeable future, whenever, because the Eastern Conference standings are so tight, they change with a snap of a finger. But I do want to look ahead, Seamus, because we have 2 potential MVP candidates coming up on Sunday night. You couldn't have scripted this better. On KG night, Luka Doncic, Jason Tatum, 2 of the faces of the league. Jason Tatum coming in at 6. This was via NBA.com. This morning, they dropped their current MVP race. Number 1 coming in from Denver, Nikola Jokic. Then tied at 2nd, they have Joel Embiid and Giannis Antetokounmpo. Ja Morant, DeMar DeRozan, and then Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic right in front and right behind each other. 6th and 7th on that list. What are you most excited for, obviously, other than Kevin Garnett going in the rafters? We'll get to later on in the show, but potential 2 MVP candidates, potential 2 faces of the league going at it. Honestly, you couldn't have scripted this better. 2 of the hottest teams in the league going at it, because the Dallas Mavericks out west right now are playing some of their best basketball all season. I believe, I want to make sure I'm right here. They are 7-3 in their last 10 games. What do you expect to see here Sunday?
Either you or Ian said it during the last post-game show. Hopefully this is not a repeat.
I said it.
Of Paul Pierce's
right.
jersey retirement, because that was terrible. And I still have the picture of LeBron celebrating like halfway on the court when he's on the bench after Jordan Clarkson's three, and just those are just infuriating moments as a Celtics fan. But Celtics have a chance to kind of right the ship in that regard to jersey retirements, because on Sunday, like I said, Luka Doncic and the Dallas Mavs come to town. That's going to be one of the more interesting games, I would think, in this last run. I mean, we've talked about, of course, the Nets game. That was highly entertaining, the Grizzlies game, even the Hawks game before that. But this one against the Mavericks, this is another team that's kind of flying under the radar in the Western Conference. They're almost like Boston Celtics West in a sense that they didn't start the season out particularly well. A lot of questions surrounded their team, and yet now they're playing pretty good ball. And that trade for Spencer Dinwiddie and Davis Bertans so far has reaped a couple of benefits for Dallas so far. And now they come into the TD Garden. Energy is going to be crazy that night, because you just think of how many times is a Kevin Garnett highlight going to come up on the board? I mean, it's going to be a dozen times. The crowd is going to be crazy on Sunday. It's going to be a primetime game or a Sunday showcase game. And in that game, the Celtics, they have to show up, and they have to show up early. And they cannot, tonight, give them credit. They came back down the stretch. They didn't have to come back because it was back and forth for most of the first half, but they took off with it down the stretch. You don't want to try to do that against good teams like the Mavericks. You want to start the game early, get yourself in a rhythm, and just try to dominate, or try to play your game for most of the game, and then of course down the stretch try to close it out like a good team. But you can't have a start like this like they did against the Pistons tonight on Sunday, or else could be Paul Pierce's day.
There's so many there's so many not excuses. Like, the Celtics shouldn't have any excuses going into Sunday's game. They get to rest tomorrow. Then Sunday afternoon, later afternoon game, I believe 3:30, if I'm not mistaken. So it's not like it's a noontime game, a 1 o'clock game. It's a 3:30 game, fairly later in the afternoon. Look, you're at home. You're one of the hottest teams, if not the hottest teams in the NBA, right? You should remember what Luka Doncic did to you just a few months ago. You lost at the buzzer, right? They took one of the wins away from the Celtics. They put a loss in the column for the Celtics off of a buzzer beater, although the Celtics were playing from behind that whole game. You should remember that. And Kevin Garnett is in attendance on Kevin Garnett night. Kevin Garnett is one of the most intensifying players to ever play the sport of basketball. You want to win in front of him.
Any sports ever.
Right. Perfect. And you want to win. You want to be gritty. You want to, whatever that got into the Celtics in this fourth quarter tonight, diving on loose balls, getting jump balls, going for those 50-50s, hustling for those rebounds. You need to play like that for a full 48 minutes, hopefully make some more shots. But that grittiness, that needs to show up. That number one defensive team, that needs to show up. Whatever happened against the Cavaliers 3 to 4 years ago when Paul Pierce had his retirement game, that can't happen. Last year, when it was Tommy Heinsohn night, when they were honoring Tommy Heinsohn, Celtics lost. That can't happen again. You got to stop winning on these you got to stop losing on these historic nights, and you got to win this game. You have to win this game. Obviously, it's not like the Celtics are headed for the lottery. If you lose this game, it's not the end of the world. But on such a big, important night in Celtics history, you got to go out there, perform well, and try to get that win, especially on national TV. Celtics have been rolling on a national scale.
Also, this is kind of like a perfect storm, too, where we're bringing in Kevin Garnett for this game jersey retirement. Like you said, one of the most intense players, like I said, in sports just ever.
Right.
And the team this year has sort of modeled their identity to, this defensive, hard-nosed team that plays with a lot of intensity on that end of the floor. Right. And on Sunday, that's exactly what they need to bring against the Dallas Mavericks to, hey, number one, just for fans' sake, just let's show some respect for the legends, because like you said, on these other legend nights, even going back, John Hondo Havlicek, when he passed away, during the Bucks series, it was like after that moment, like the Celtics just completely collapsed.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, that was really a nice way to, honor a legend.
Yeah.
Like, well, it's every time we try to honor a legend, the team loses. And in the grand scheme of things, of course, it doesn't really mean that much, whether you win on that night specifically. Like you said, it's not, like we're playing for the lottery on Sunday.
It's like the cherry on top, though.
But look, like I said, I still remember that Cavs game. We still remember that Cavs game.
And we got white.
A lot better than a lot of games that season. And we just look at it, it's just embedded within our minds that, man, that game was just terrible on that historic night. And the ceremony afterwards was fantastic. And I'm sure KG's will be as well. But the Celtics, just for a PR sake, show up, show your identity, display it towards everybody. I don't have any doubt that they won't, but just got to do it.
Right. You want to say it no matter what. And you mentioned a good point. Like, that would, like, displaying everything that the Celtics stand for and how they've been playing, especially over the last 2 to 3 months, the last 21 games. What perfect way to honor Kevin Garnett than to play like that on Kevin Garnett night, right? Like, that is the perfect way. Like, the fourth quarter tonight, defensively at least, that was the Kevin Garnett way to play that fourth quarter. And I sound like a broken record, but like Marcus Smart, 5 steals tonight, diving on loose balls, doing Marcus Smart things, doing Kevin Garnett things, getting up, beating his chest. He fell down. He stepped on, who was it? He went up for a layup. He stepped on his ankle. Smart went down. I thought he was going to go on his knuckles and start doing push-ups. That's just the type of player Marcus Smart is. I remember Jaylen Brown, I believe his rookie year, he had his head down. KG texted him after the game and said, I saw you on the camera. Why the F was your head down? Pick your head up. He cares about these guys. He understands. He knows what it takes to win. And the Celtics need to, Seamus. They need to, like, look, for me, like, on a make it or break it season, like, this game means nothing. Like, this doesn't make or break the season, right? Like, if we lose, like, it's not the end of the world, I said. It's like the cherry on top. But for me, it's a must win. Like, you dogged it on Paul Pierce night. You absolutely dogged it on Paul Pierce night. That was an embarrassment. Like, Celtics players will tell you that was bad. Like, that was horrid. I love the Celtics, but that was bad. That was a terrible way to honor Paul Pierce, one of the greatest players of all time, one of the, if not the greatest Celtic of all time. And you dogged it. It was to LeBron James, Paul Pierce's biggest rival, maybe outside of Kobe Bryant. You can't do that against Kevin Garnett. On Kevin Garnett night.
We still have the pictures. We still have you still have the meme of Paul Pierce sitting and just looking. Yeah, there's the night right there in his little plaid green jacket there.
Right.
Let me see if I can find this real quick. You just type in Paul Pierce meme. It's the first photo that shows up. It's this one right here.
Yeah.
There it is. It's just etched in your memory.
Right.
Or it's etched in my memory.
You know how etched in
that
memory
photo
that
right
is?
there.
You know how etched in my memory that is? I remember, for some stupid reason, that's when the Celtics debuted those Parquet Pride jerseys, or, the jerseys without the sleeves, the gray ones. For that, that's how bad the night was. I remember exactly what the teams wore. That's when you remember a bad memory. And I just don't want that to be Kevin Garnett night. I think this team has a totally different approach, totally different identity than we did years back. But since we're talking about Kevin Garnett night, let's talk about KG. Big ticket to the rafters. 2007, he was acquired via trade from Minnesota to Boston. Spent about 7 years in Boston, 2007 to 2013, 6 if you really want to say it. And his career stats in Boston, 15 points, 8 rebounds, a block, a steal, 52% shooting from the field. This is all stats in Boston, by the way. 396 games played in Boston. He had a winning record of 267 wins and 129 losses. He was a one-time champion in 2008, made it back to the NBA Finals in 2010. He was actually, that was the year, I believe Perk got injured, and that really hurt the Celtics badly. 48-36 winning playoff record in the playoffs for the Celtics. And take a look at those 2008 final stats. That is pure dominance. 18 points, 13 rebounds, 3 assists, 37.9 minutes played per game, Seamus. Think of that. Nearly 40 minutes a game played. That's in 6 games. That's nearly the whole 6 games. 1.7 steals per game, a block, and he was a total plus 36 in that NBA Finals. Celtics won the 2008 NBA Finals 4-2 over the Los Angeles Lakers for the Celtics' 17th banner in franchise history, their first since 1986. Take a look at those historic pictures by Kevin Garnett, the big ticket. I cannot wait for Sunday, 6 o'clock p.m. Tune into NBC Sports Boston. This is a little promo for NBC Sports Boston. Tune into NBC Sports Boston, 6 p.m. for the ceremony. Tune into, I believe, ABC. Yeah, that's mortifying. Oh, why would you show that? Way to ruin the mood.
I was just saying, man. I was just pointing it out. I mentioned it. I'm trying to find the LeBron one, but there was a much. 2018. I'm sorry. I've never gotten over this point because it was such a good year with such a bad capping of LeBron just dominating us in Game 7,
right?
And of course, that moment happening. So I have more optimism moving forward because the Lakers are bad. And I think LeBron is leaving in the offseason personally. I'm just going to go out on record right now. I think LeBron is leaving the Lakers this offseason. I just think it's happening.
Where do you think he goes? Do you think he goes back to Cleveland? Because he had talked about that at the All-Star break. That had come into conversation. And not to change the subject completely, but like there's some talks going around. He said he's definitely not going to the Orlando. He said he'd rather retire than go to the Orlando Magic. So that's out of the question.
We're about to embark on, I don't even know. Like I was going to say we're about to embark on the weirdest portion of NBA history we've ever seen with, LeBron James. If LeBron is going to want to join him, or, how high does he go in the draft? Because right now he's at Sierra Canyon and, he's not really touted as this, this top 5 prospect or this top 10 prospect. He's like 43rd in his class right now. I mean, some top 10 guys don't even work out. So to say that he's going to work out, that's not a surefire thing to say.
Yeah, but
and so I wonder,
take a chance on him because he's Bronny
James,
because he's
that's what I'm saying. Like, are we going to see teams take a chance just to acquire LeBron? And is LeBron actually legit about playing with his son? And, I was going to say this might be the weirdest part of NBA history, that little storyline developing here. But, then again, Ben Simmons has not played one game this season. Kyrie Irving is still sitting out games because of the vaccine mandate. James Harden is a Sixer. I mean, the NBA, we always think, this offseason is supposed to be quiet, or this trade deadline is supposed to be quiet, or this event's supposed to be quiet. The NBA never sleeps, folks. It never sleeps, ever.
It gets louder and louder.
And this is just the next chapter, and it includes, of course, one of the greatest of all time, LeBron James.
Have you ever thought, like that's got to come into people's mind, like the era of basketball. We grew up, even a little bit before our time. I mean, like guys like Tim Duncan, KG, Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, all those guys, Kobe Bryant. I don't know if I already said him, Tony Parker, like those guys slowly faded out and right before our eyes. And guys like LeBron James, Carmelo Anthony, Dwight Howard, even, which he is so underrated in my opinion. Like, I get he hasn't had the same career since he's left Orlando, and I agree with that. But I mean, those guys are slowly fading out the door, and it's crazy to see that. And we're going on to a new chapter where Jason Tatum, Ja Morant, Trae Young, Luka Doncic are going to be the new. I shouldn't say faces of the league, but they're going to be those new guys, right? Who they're the stars, and that's who everybody buys the jerseys of, and that's who everybody wants to meet, and that's the basketball cards that they stock up on. Like, this is a new generation, and it's happening before our eyes. And the new generational talent that we're seeing, Seamus, in these guys, like our matchup coming up on Sunday, Luka Doncic and Jason Tatum. We saw Ja Morant, Jason Tatum the other night. We've seen Trae Young and Jason Tatum 3 times in the last 21 games. This is a treat. And I even said it come All-Star during the All-Star game when we were seeing guys like Garland and Jared Allen and Jason Tatum and Luka Doncic, Trae Young, all of those guys, even throw in Devin Booker, like those guys, it's no longer LeBron and Steph. I know Steph had 50, but they're getting towards the end, and Kevin Durant and all those guys. And we've seen those guys years years on years on years in the All-Star game. Slowly, that's going to come to an end, just like we saw with Dwayne Wade and Dirk Nowitzki just a few years ago. And yeah, it makes you appreciate the game a lot more, Seamus, right? Especially as a fan, media, whatever you want to call us, it certainly makes you appreciate the game a lot more.
Yeah, and I always try to, going from game to game, come on post game, we watch the game, of course, we post content on games. I do try to focus, obviously on the Celtics, but looking at other teams, you never want to take matchups for granted. Like when Luka Doncic comes to the Garden on Sunday, that to me is a special moment. When Cade Cunningham tonight is putting up 27-plus points in 3 quarters in the Garden, that's a special moment.
Correct.
Because all these guys, they're going to be the future of the league. And we always talk about players when they're gone or dwindling out of their career or in the midst, we don't enjoy it as much. We're always, this is what's happening right now. What is he doing moving forward? But then we look back and go, look at all these great moments. You just want to enjoy the moments that you have when it's happening, because right now, time flies. Jason Tatum, he's already in his 5th year.
I know.
In the NBA. He's already half a decade in. And these other guys, Luka Doncic, he's already in his fourth season. And before
Jaylen Brown's more than a half decade in.
Yeah, he's 6 seasons in with the Celtics. That's crazy to think about. I mean, I remember there was no such thing as Jaylen Brown in the league. There was no such thing as Jason Tatum, Luka Doncic, Trae Young, all these guys. And we're in a spot now where the older generations can attest to this more, where they see guys develop into the league. But, at our age, it's almost like this generation that's coming into the league now, we ourselves are growing up with them in a certain sense.
Totally. That's a great way to put it.
While they're developing in the league, like we're developing in the world. And it's very cool to see that growth and progression, especially with these young guys. And, Cade Cunningham tonight, the latest one we're seeing, where, he wasn't even in the league last year, goes to being the number 1 pick. People have questions, was he the right pick over Evan Mobley and Scotty Barnes? Then all of a sudden tonight he comes in and, he's been doing this for a good portion of the season, but he just controls the game, plays at his own pace. And yes, he, ran out of gas down the stretch, but for most of the night, he kept the Pistons in that game and actually almost brought them to a win. And over the last 9 games, they have 6 wins. So, this guy is an up-and-coming player, and this is the moment in time where, yes, he's on a bad team, but these are the type of performances that you want to remember and enjoy in the moment, because, one day all these guys are going to retire. They're going to go down in the history books. And the fact that we're sitting here today watching them, like, it's very special to see that happen, to see their performances happen and to see them grow over time.
Right. It goes by like with the blink of an eye. I remember, Seamus, I went to Kobe Bryant's last game in Boston, December 30th, 2015. And that was such a special moment. Celtics lost that game, but I really embraced. I wasn't mad. I wasn't sad or whatever. I really embraced and watched Kobe Bryant. He hit a big time dagger. And what was so special to me afterwards was I heard Kobe Bryant say in interviews and stuff, this was the first time he's brought his family, his daughters and his wife, to Boston all together. And just for me as a basketball fan, I was there. Like, that was like a big piece of not only NBA history, but like a big piece of Kobe Bryant and his family. Like, that was a big moment for them. And I was a part of it. And it was such a tremendous game. And also Paul Pierce's last game in Boston when he was a Clipper and he hit that 3-pointer at the end, the place erupted. You would have thought that they won the championship. Even the ABC announcers they were going nuts. And that's such a picture perfect way. And like you said, it's all happening before our eyes, and it goes by with the snap of a finger. Marcus Smart is nearly a decade into his career. I think this is 8th or 9th season. Same thing with Giannis Antetokounmpo. Same thing with Joel Embiid, right? They're in their 20s, but they've been in the league between 7, 8, 9 years, and it goes by so quick. I mean, I remember when Joel Embiid was drafted. I remember he was sitting in that draft room and he was dealing with that. What was it? A knee injury. He didn't play right away, and just, dude, the snap of a finger. It is absolutely insane. And Kelly Olynyk, you saw him tonight out there standing with the few former Celtics at halftime. We drafted him in 2013, right with Marcus Smart, I believe, and he was such
the year before Marcus Smart.
Yeah, year before Marcus, he was such a key piece to that rebuild in 2013 and 14. He was brought in when Brad Stevens was brought in. And that's another thing too, Seamus. Brad Stevens coached the Celtics for what, 7 or 8 years? Like that went by. I was there at Brad Stevens' first win. The Celtics started off 0-4 in the season in 2013, and then they came home against who was it? It was the Utah Jazz, and they got a 10-point win, and that was Brad Stevens' first career NBA win. And then just a few games later, the Celtics went into Miami and beat LeBron James, Chris Bosh on a 0.6 of a second buzzer beater from Jeff Green in the corner. And it's the little moments that you never want to take for granted, because time goes by quick. And this is why I'm so excited for Sunday. Not only is Kevin Garnett going up into the rafters, but two future stars who are in about 10 years from now, we're going to look back at this moment and go, whoa, those two were unbelievable. The way that those two played and the way those two went head to head. I mean, look at that Ja Morant and Jason Tatum. I know I'm kind of rambling here, but that performance, that one going to go down in the history books. And we're going to look at that performance 10 years from now and go, just like we look at, LeBron James and Kevin Durant now, we're going to look at, Ja Morant and Jason Tatum just the same way, But I'm excited, Seamus. Big game on Sunday. Any final thoughts before we close up?
Well, I mean, I'm pretty excited for this game. I'm all of a sudden, I can't say it enough that back in January, December, November, well, maybe not so much November because we still held hope. We were saying, December is the month that's going to tell us a lot about this team.
Right.
And back in those months, it was just rough sailing. You're coming on here saying the same shit every game, saying the same things about the Celtics and dissecting all of their problems. And it was getting to the point, I was never necessarily, I never necessarily get mad over losing. I laugh at losing just because, I don't know, losing to me is just, typically it's effort and execution. And when guys aren't executing, it's kind of funny. And it was a laughing stock of a team for a while there. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it feels like 2019 again. It feels like 2018. It feels like 2017, 2016 again, 2015 even, where we made the playoffs randomly as a 7 seed at the end of the season with Isaiah. And right now, it's just this last stretch, and even last season, you talk about taking those little moments and enjoying them. Those moments back then, back last year, 2020 and 2021, that season, and then the first portion of this year, really put things into perspective of, when you're winning, enjoy those moments because they will not last forever. And when they dwindle and go away, when those winning moments go away, you're going to be left like me, either laughing or like Justin on most nights, pretty angry about the Celtics losing games, which he rightfully was or you rightfully were at the beginning of the season. And it just goes along with the point. Enjoy the moment.
And Jason Tatum said that a few weeks ago as well on a podcast, on JJ Redick's podcast. When he was a rookie in second and third year, Celtics, he's been in two out of 3 years he went to the Eastern Conference Finals. He thought that was normal, right? And then the beginning of the season, even last season, Celtics facing below 500 records at times. And he's like, maybe I did take those moments for granted. Maybe that's not always the case. Going to the Eastern Conference Finals, being 2 games away from the finals, being 9 points away from the NBA Finals back against the Cavaliers. I mean, you definitely, even as fans, right? Like players can't take it for granted just as much as fans can't take it for granted. Like they're lowest of lows and there's highest of highs. Right now we're experiencing a high, but hopefully it carries over in the playoffs. I also want to mention really quick, Seamus, before we go. What I would love is we're expecting a majority, if not the whole 2008 Celtics championship team to be there on Sunday night. I would love if they went into the locker room, pregame, halftime, whatever, and they gave a little speech, little Ubuntu speech to this team and get them pumped for tonight or, Sunday night. I think that would be huge for this team, even if just a couple players go in there and really talk to these guys, get in their heads and make sure they come out with this win. But Sunday should be fun. a historic night, at least in Celtic franchise history. We'll have you covered. I don't know when Postgame Live is going to be because we're definitely going to want to watch the ceremony. So we'll keep you guys updated. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Celtics_weekly. Follow us on Instagram at Celtics Talk Weekly. Go follow Seamus, Celtics Every Day on Instagram. He'll have you covered. Celtics Rising if you guys want to go follow me as well. But yeah, Sunday should be fun. Celtics, Mavericks, Luka, Tatum, KG going up into the rafters. We have an action-packed, lots of content going out. Celtics Talk Weekly on Sunday afternoon. I'm Justin Lowe. That's Seamus Darlingo, a.k.a. Celtics Every Day. We will see you guys Sunday. Take care, everybody.